says the meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. So that
Oh,
must
wow.
mean we are live on YouTube.
Could it
So
be?
it could be, possibly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to
The Baptist
And the Buddhist
with Mark.
and Brian. And this
And
episode is a holiday special.
happy holiday.
Yes, happy late Vesak.
Yes, Vesak, which we're gonna spin it on. We're gonna put a spin on the holiday, the holiday special episode, because now it's Brian's turn to delve into his side of things with the the holiday he just mentioned. But first,
Yes.
um,
Who are we?
who in the world are you? Well, obviously, you guys are watching or maybe even listening because we have a lot of podcasters out there listening to our audio, which is greatly appreciated.
Thank
Um,
you.
yes, thank you guys. And thank you for whoever's watching too, live and not live. Um, but we are the Baptist and the Buddhist, two twin brothers with vastly different faiths, and we are openly exploring them together in dialogue and in fun and exploration. So and these are pretty much live, like real time discussions. We've never discussed any of these things before, so you guys get the first fly on the wall view into the discussion. So, and
Yeah.
one thing that I really like to see too is furthering the discussion with our audience. So, our listeners and our viewers, if you want to message us, if you want to leave a public comment on YouTube or wherever, we're on all podcast platforms. We are we are on YouTube. We're on social media galore. You can always just reach out
Instagram,
to Instagram,
Facebook,
Facebook,
Twitter,
Twitter, everything and anything.
the TikToks.
The TikToks. We're even buried in some of the weirdo places like Reddit. Like, wow, oh, you're a Redditor. Oh, great.
Oh, brother.
Yes, we are Redditors by technicalities because we're on there. But
We
shoot
have
us
an
an email.
account.
Shoot us an
Do we
email.
use it? No, we don't, but it's
It's
there.
there, and if you reach out to us, we will get notified or see it eventually. Or if you're old fashioned, not too old fashioned because we're not going there yet, maybe never. But if you're old fashioned, you can always reach out Baptist and Buddhist at gmail.com. All one word, no funny symbols, no thes either, no definite articles.
No.
Definitely no definite articles. So, I know last holiday special we got to cover Easter, and then before that was our mega ultra holiday special
The
with
winter holiday.
the winter holiday season finale. It was great, very festive. It was awesome.
Yeah. We don't
Um,
have any jingle bells today.
no, no birthday whistles or whatever you call them, little things.
Yeah, party
What do
buzzers.
you
I don't know.
party? Yeah, I don't even know what to call them. The unfurlers, because you unfurl the thing.
I
This is a
like that.
fancy. I'm gonna move this away from
The unfurling whirler. I don't know. Um, yeah. Um, I don't know.
something like that. But Brian, I saw a post a couple days ago, or maybe 3 days ago now. I don't even remember when it was, to be honest. That you
Monday.
were that you wished the world a happy Vesak. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
basically.
basically, that was a good one, man. That's good. Yeah, so Monday was Vesak, the biggest Buddhist holiday out there, pretty much, at least for the Theravada side of things. beyond Theravada Buddhism. I'm not entirely sure how big it is, but it is. I've heard it described before as the Christmas, the Easter, and the Thanksgiving of Buddhism all in one day. Um,
Whoa, that's big.
and yeah, so Vesak is a holiday that celebrates the birth of the Buddha, the enlightenment of the Buddha, and the death of the Buddha, which I'll go into a little bit into the specifics about it, uh, but it's a day to celebrate and to remember those moments of the Buddha's life, and really, it's time and time again. I've over the last week, I've listened to a lot of different talks on Vesak because it just happened and everyone's talking about it in the Buddhist world, and I've watched a lot of like live stream celebration things, and time again, the biggest emphasis in the talks that I've heard is really, well, it's kind of twofold. One, and well, I say it's twofold, but it's actually one fold with two side. I don't know, two sides of the same coin. So one is appreciation. It's a day to like really appreciate the the Buddha's teachings and the Buddha teaching his teachings. It's seen, the teachings are seen as this great gift from the Buddha, because in the stories, the Buddha after his enlightenment is like, wow, no one's gonna understand this. I'm not gonna teach this. And in the stories, uh, Brahma comes down and is like, you probably should teach this stuff to these humans because like this is pretty profound and very helpful. So why don't you go do that? Um, and
So he was reluctant at first.
he was very reluctant. He's like, none of this, of what I've discovered, like, would make sense. Like, there's no point.
Hmm.
Um, and then he had a moment of realization, like, oh wait, like this could potentially be extremely beneficial to sentient beings. So he, so we see it as as this great gift, this great opportunity, to it's what he taught is a path of relinquishing ourselves from that which causes us dukkha or suffering, um, and so we use Vesak as a day of appreciation of and cultivating a kind of, the best word is appreciation, really. Like, you so on the other side of that same coin is you use this day to deepen your practice, and the traditions vary from country to country, and tradition to tradition. So there's a lot, like, I listened to one one monk talking about how it's celebrated in Sri Lanka, and they it's a huge celebration, very colorful and lively. Of They make lanterns. There's a lot of music, and apparently even like theatrical interpretations of the Jataka tales, which are the tales of the Buddha's past lives, a lot of times as animals and whatnot. So I'm guessing there's probably some great costumes, great masks and dancing, and also giving away of food. There's I guess there's these huge Vesak events in Sri Lanka where they'll even like shut the streets down and like just give out food, um, which is
Wow.
such a Buddhist thing, but
Yeah.
um, And so you can see it's in many countries. It's very, very colorful and lively, and it's a big, joyous event. Uh, and in India, I think it's a it's it's a celebration, a large celebration in India as well. Um, People gathering in temples. A lot of traditions have a uh, bathing the baby Buddha statue ceremony where they'll place a statue of the baby Buddha in a basin and you know ladle water and probably fragrant tea over the statue,
Hmm.
kind of as a sign of appreciation. And um, a lot of times, physical offerings, whether it be flowers or incense or candles or whatever, or food, is used, um, kind of as I don't want to say superficial means, but like a physical activity to help kind of cultivate this this generosity and uh, this appreciation. And so you see a lot of that. And there's a baby baby Buddha statue behind me, still up there from Vesak. So there's a lot of different, varying traditions. And but for me and for many Buddhist practitioners, the go-to way of celebrating and observing and Vesak is it's basically the same thing one would do if you were to observe Uposatha, which is observing the 8 precepts. So it's not as fun and festive. It's like party. Ooh, it's I I will refrain from from eating afternoon and from entertainment, and I will deepen my practice. Spend a lot of time meditating, a lot of time reading the suttas or listening to Dhamma talks, and as I said, like that Vesak is used as a day to like really appreciate the Dhamma, appreciate the Buddhist teachings, and really just like dig into it and kind of like revitalize your practice, revitalize your what do you call it? You're kind of rededicate yourself. Like, yeah, this is
Right.
it's a great day to kind of refocus and uh recenter, I guess. And that's Uposatha days are generally used like that too, but Vesak is really big this really big Uposatha day. So it's
Hmm.
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you talking about like kind of revitalizing and like re-energizing you. It for some reason it reminds me of like in the Christian circles, there are people in the church we call C and E Christians. It's like C and E Christians. What are those? It's like they're the people that only go to church on Christmas and
Yeah.
Easter. Um, so maybe it revitalizes and re-energizes them, but like that's the only time they'll see the inside of a church for whatever reason they think they have to go on those holidays. But like it kind of shows that those holidays are like a special time or like a special reminder for those that maybe they don't go regularly, but for some reason it reminds them or revitalizes their their thought on that on the faith. It's like, oh, I gotta go to church, or Jesus won't love me or something, or like I want to make sure I get my check marked off, or it's like, oh, maybe I should go back. Like maybe I should check it out again. So that just reminded me of that, and I thought I would chime in.
Yeah, yeah. I think holidays, especially if like very religious uh, origin, um, is generally used as a way uh, of revitalization, revitalizing your faith or your practice or your dedication. And it's kind of like kind of like a pep rally or something. Kind of makes you, reminds you of what was important and joyous about that, about the practice or the faith. And
Yeah, at my church, a lot of times people will describe midweek services like that. Like, oh, a number of people, not everyone from Sunday morning, but a number of people will come to the Wednesday night service or Bible study or whatever you call it, and they're like, oh, it's an escape from the craziness of the world, and it's a nice spiritual break to like just come back together, and it's kind of like a pep rally, like we still got your back, we're not like you're not in this alone or something like that, like through the week. So yeah, pep rally definitely.
yeah, or I guess that's what revivals are for, right?
Right, yeah, yeah, in Baptist circles especially you see a lot of revivals, and usually, I mean, that can come in many forms, but from my experience, we will just go through maybe like half a week or a week of just preaching every night and hearing people preach, or maybe there's music involved. um, I know a lot of times there will be tent revivals, especially like in like the South or more in the center of the Bible Belt. There'll be tent revivals, and you just try to pack the tent, and mm, tons of people show up, and yeah, it's like a those are really like pep rallies, especially if you're in a tent, it's going to be a good time. But I don't think I've ever experienced a tent revival.
I can't say that I have, but um but yeah, I've been like af-
So yeah, tent revivals. um, I was gonna bring up a holiday as well. Um, because I'm like, oh man, Brian's gonna talk about Vesak. Like, I have nothing to talk about for this holiday time, because we've been through Easter. Christmas is long gone. Like, we're right in middle of almost in middle of Christmas. Um, from now and then, so like it's like, oh, like I don't think I can compare this to anything Christian, but I did find some interesting stuff. I won't go into a ton of detail because it's not really from my circles, but um, around, I think it was probably this week or last week, a lot of Catholic churches would celebrate the Ascension of Jesus, or they might call it Ascension Day, and it's I vaguely know what they do to celebrate it, but it's 40 days after Jesus died and came from and rose from the grave. He spent 40 days on the earth, uh, basically teaching his disciples. I've heard people describe it as like just a 40-day long like Bible study with Jesus, and then at the end he went on to the up to the Mount of Olives and ascended into the clouds, and he said, I'll return in like manner. And the his disciples were just staring up like, what in the world? And he promised to send his spirit as a comforter, and then some angels showed up and like, hey, stop just staring into the clouds. You have work to do. And apparently Catholics celebrate the Ascension. A lot of times they might do like a kind of like a parade or something with banners and stuff, like representing Jesus's ascension into heaven.
Hmm.
Some people, some countries they'll run around in the streets, uh, quote unquote, chasing demons, um, or like whipping demons or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but um, that was
Wow.
the only like holiday closely related to this time frame that I could find. So I wanted to pipe in with that eventually.
Yeah, I know. Was it yesterday? The Jewish tradition celebrated a minor holiday called Lag Bomer, and it's apparently it involves bonfires, and
Hmm.
yeah. But the Ascension, it reminds me of a Buddhist celebration that I think is usually referred to as the Festival of Miracles or something, and it's uh I know the Tibetan tradition celebrates it. I don't know much about the other traditions, but it celebrates after the Buddha's enlightenment, he had ascended into one of the Deva realms, the Tushita heaven, and for 3 months I think he taught the Dharma up to the Devas, and including one of which was his mother who passed away in childbirth, had been reborn into this realm, and so he went up there for three months and taught to the Devas, and then came back down.
Hmm.
Uh, so I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me because in that in that story he goes up and then comes back down. Um, One thing that I've always been taught and that I've studied in the Bible with Jesus's ascension, um, there's kind of a weird passage when he, like, right after he um, rises up from the dead. I think it was Mary finds him. He's like, "Hey, don't touch me. I've not yet ascended. Like I'm not like don't touch me because like I I'm basically like too clean. Like I can't get like in purified or whatever the word I'm thinking of. It's like I have not yet ascended. But then like later you see people touching him and everyone's like, well, what's that about? It's kind of weird. And then when I was reading about Ascension Day, they're like, oh, he finally ascends into heaven to like basically like put put to rest our sins and like make peace for us all. But from what I understand and have heard others teach as well, like Jesus rises from the dead and he's like in a purified state from the dead, and he's like, hey, I haven't ascended yet. And like what is he talking about there? But I'm pretty sure what happens is he ascends into heaven that day that he rises from the grave, and Mary's like, oh, I want to touch you, and it's like, don't touch me, because he needs to make himself what's called a first fruit offering. And that term is largely comes from like the Jewish offerings. They would offer the first fruit, um, and he was to offer himself as a first fruit. There's actually a feast of like a celebration of first fruits, and he was like him ascending in that state, offering himself as a first fruit of sacrifice for the sins of everyone. Was he was that pure offering. The offerings in the temple needed to be without blemish and pure, and he ascended into heaven, offered himself up as that first fruit on the in the holies of holies in the heavens. And then he made his way back to earth after that, because every feast, every celebration in the in the Jewish celebrations in the Old Testament needed to be fulfilled, and he fulfilled that prophetical feast and that prophetical Sabbath uh, with offering himself as the first fruits. Uh, and then he came back, and then he, like, Thomas was able to touch his hands and his sides, like, hey, this is me, I'm Jesus. And then Jesus could eat the fish and honeycomb with his disciples in the upper rooms or wherever he showed up to them. um, and he could interact then with them. But there was that time he rose from the dead, he ascended as a first fruit offering into heaven, and then he came back down to teach for 40 days. And then he ascended in the showy, in the clouds going up to show his disciples, like, hey, I'm leaving this way, I'm coming back this way. And giving them the promise of the Holy Spirit as the comforter for them. So just a interesting little side note just that I was reminded of from that
Yeah.
rabbit trail. Um,
Yeah. Speaking of events, in general, uh,
Speaking of things,
hmm, things. I know what things are. Uh, yeah, I had briefly mentioned the three events that Vesak, you know, commemorates, and I know I've like delved into them a little bit before in the past, but the Buddha's birth. A lot of people see Vesak as like the Buddha's birthday. Kind of like Christmas, I guess.
yeah.
And some traditions even state that the Buddha was born on the full moon. Uh, in the so Vesak actually is it comes from the name of the month that the full moon day that Vesak falls on
Hmm.
takes place in, which is like Vaisaka, I think is the month name.
Hmm. Okay.
And so a lot of traditions will state that the Buddha was born on the full moon in that month, was enlightened, and died in the same month on the full moon day. Um, which is why it's venerated and celebrated as it is. But um,
Hmm.
is that for real? I don't know. Vesak was also kind of formalized uh, in 1950, I think, in Sri Lanka with the World Fellowship of Buddhists. Um, they came together and was like, okay, we will celebrate these three events on Vesak, and it will be the full moon,
Hmm.
day in this month, which happens to be the month of May for us. So,
Okay. Interesting.
um, yeah, and because they went on a lunar calendar, um, so and
Like
I don't
everything
know if
besides modern day.
yeah,
Well,
and go ahead.
Uh, oh, I was gonna say we did get a chat or a message from Bab Daisy 3 on YouTube, and she did say that Ascension Day is May 26th this year. And I
Oh,
do remember seeing that now. I think last year was May 14th or something like that, or like around that time. So thank you for that clarification, um, Bab Daisy. I really appreciate that.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, now that it is mentioned, I remember seeing it on my calendar in my kitchen that Ascension Day is upcoming. Um, and and my calendar actually had Vesak on it, and so I was kind of impressed.
Well, I'm not surprised at that. You are the Buddhist.
But I didn't make the calendar. Um,
Well, I mean, you could have.
I could have, but
You usually write things on calendars too, so.
that's true.
But to have Ascension Day, that's pretty cool too. That they have that in there.
Yeah, yeah, they have a lot of cool uh religious holidays in that calendar.
Hmm.
But they even have Sakadawa, which is a Tibetan. Uh, it kind of feels like a Tibetan version of Vesak because they celebrate
Hmm.
both three events, but it doesn't happen until June, the June full moon. So I don't know if it's just because the Tibetan calendar goes off of a different timing. I know Vesak will fall on different days for different traditions, but it's always the full moon uh, in general. Whether the timing of the calendars are a little off, I'm not sure.
Hmm.
But um, we also had a lunar eclipse on the full moon, so that was pretty
That's
cool. I
true.
missed it because I fell asleep way too early, but
I did too, and then I got up and I saw like got up sometime in the middle of the night and I saw on my phone someone's like, "Hey, the lunar like wow, that eclipse is awesome." And it's like, "Oh, 10 minutes ago." Yeah, so I missed it. I probably could have seen a little bit of it, but
yeah.
I didn't.
But yeah, the the reason why these three events are celebrated on Vesak and kind of exemplified as the most important days of Buddhism. One, the Buddha was born. That's pretty important.
Yeah.
He is said to be reborn into his final human rebirth. Really, his final rebirth in general,
Hmm.
because of the way Nibbana works. But and the stories of his birth are pretty fun, are pretty cool. Um, it's said that he was born from the side of his mother, and when he was born, he took 7 steps, and in his foot, where his feet had touched the ground, lotuses bloomed, and he lifted his finger to the sky, which is why the statue actually has him pointing up.
Hmm.
And he proclaimed that this is my final birth, you know, and it's pretty fantastical.
Kind of nightmarish.
Probably not to be taken literally, but who knows? Maybe. Um, and in the stories as well, like Devas had come around to see this because everyone knew this is something special. And I was listening to a talk, and the mythics of the story aside, uh, a Buddha like is something like pretty spectacular that you don't need a walking, talking newborn baby to be impressed by. Uh, uh, because a Buddha, or like a Samasambuddha, which was you know the, the Buddha wasn't taught this path to awakening. It was something he had kind of rediscovered. It's a natural part of existence that can be accessed. And uh and in this talk, this monk was asked, like, are you know is a Buddha unnatural? Like, it seems like kind of an accident or a mistake that, like, someone discovered this cheat code to life or
Like
something.
a glitch in the matrix.
Yeah. And he's like, he said no, it's not unnatural. It's, and I don't know if he used this word, but it's almost expected or inevitable. Like,
Hmm.
every once in a while, in an uncountable, past, and an unmeasurable future, like, people are going to, just kind of by odds, someone's going to discover this method of releasing, oneself from suffering. And that's kind of what the Buddha is. I mean, the Buddha in a way isn't special because he was exactly like we were. Like he was a human being who just got really curious, really curious and really serious about suffering. And and he's not special because we all have this potential, this ability. Like the state we're in now, the Buddha once was in. Like our level of uncertainty, our level of attachments. Um, Not to say he isn't special. It's like wow, it's pretty special that he was able to share these teachings, but it's not out of the ordinary, I should say.
Okay. So um there's a legal concept to that. There's a term called inevitable discovery, and
Mm,
it apparently it especially applies to like procedural law with law enforcement. So when they search something, they without probable cause, they usually have to have a search warrant or something. And if they find something new, like wow, what's this bag of drugs doing in this car seat, like in the front passenger seat, um, and they might not have to have a search warrant for that or probable cause because of inevitable discovery. Like, well, we were inevitably going to discover that when we were talking to him through his window or something like that. Um, I'm not a I'm not a lawyer, but I know my way around some law. But it reminded me of that, like inevitable discovery. It's not a glitch in the matrix. Like we didn't need a cheat code or hack code or a search warrant. Like it was inevitable. Like it was gonna be stumbled upon because it's
yeah,
right there. Like someone's gonna see it.
yeah. Um, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Inevitable discovery. That's
Yep.
kind of what it is. Um,
Exactly.
it's not like total. I wouldn't say it's immediately obvious, inevitably like, oh, of course, but it's uh because in from a Buddhist perspective, we are so entangled in our cravings and
Hmm.
everything that like it's pretty difficult to see that unless you're really looking for it, which is what's so rare about the Buddha is that he was able to look through all that stuff and realize, hey, there's a way to disentangle ourselves from this, and it's not through ritual, it's not through belief, it's through a, a certain level of like relinquishment, and realization in a way. But and that's what the second event that Vesak touches on is his enlightenment, which is arguably probably the most important part. It's he sits under the Bodhi tree, and you know he makes a vow, like I'm not going to get up until I actually finally realize this truth and release myself from suffering. And and that's what he did. And you know there's very dramatic stories on Mara, the tempter, the kind of the devil of Buddhism, uh tempting him and threatening him. And this can all be seen as what takes place in our mind. You know Temptation will arise, and the Buddha, when he sees Mara, is like, ah, I see you, Mara. uh I know what you're doing. um and and these great stories of Mara sending armies, and the arrows that his army shoots at the Buddha turns into flowers, and very beautiful dramatic imagery for something that happens within. And and the moment of enlightenment, it's the moment that I would argue that Vesak really is celebrating and appreciating. Um, and the Buddha went on for like 40 some years teaching across the continent or the subcontinent. Um, and thus comes to the third event, his death. His death is important, not because it was dramatic. It was quite undramatic, really. When you read the stories, he inconsequentially gets some sort of food poisoning, and he sees all of it coming. Like he knows, like, oh, this alms food that this you know devout layperson is giving to me is gonna kill me. Um, no fault to the person; they just didn't know it was bad. Um, and in fact, that person, he praised that person, for you know such generosity, and I think kind of in a way to like take misdirected blame off of them or something. But um and he's like, okay, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die soon. So you know so he lays down in a grove of solid trees and gives one last talk. And it's important because it's not only known as his, like, the moment of his death, it's the moment of uh parinibbana, his final relinquishment. um because he's still in a human form, although he's enlightened and liberated from suffering. But like, that's his final human form, and afterwards he's completely liberated, completely relinquished. Or as nibbana means extinguished, the all of the all of the fuel of suffering and craving has finally been used up, which includes the physical body. So it's like, okay, physical body's gone, like, liberation. And so that's celebrated, obviously, because it's a very important moment. And it's at his death, he says, that his disciples ask, who's gonna lead the sangha now, who's gonna be the leader of this movement. He says, there's you don't need a leader, you have the Dhamma, so let the Dhamma lead you. And it's it's a great I think it's a great system he set up. And it's one of the oldest, like, community. I almost see it as an intentional community. The monastic sangha, the lay people. It's very intentional. Uh, gives off intentional community vibes, and it's a community that really comes together and is upheld for a very specific reason. And it's arguably one of the oldest such uh, structures or communities. It's been around for 2,500 years. I think Jainism beat them out by like 5 years. Um, but yeah, it's the Buddha left a a, a very solid structure to continue the teachings, which will eventually, you know, disintegrate and disappear like all things. But it's lasted this long.
And it's inevitably discovered, right?
And it will inevitably be discovered far into the future, when all remnants of Buddhism has long been forgotten. There will be another Buddha, another person who inevitably discovers it by their own means.
Very, very interesting. my one of my questions was going to be when, like, when is it determined to celebrate it? But you already answered that question. So, like, why that day or this day or when what day? But you answered that. So,
Yeah, and it does really depend on the tradition as well. I was looking at the dates, um, and by nation and by tradition, it varies somewhat, but
so did you do anything specific to celebrate it besides watch live stream things and stuff?
yeah, I observed the 8 precepts for 24 hours. So the five main lay precepts and the 24-hour vows of not eating after noon, which it, it's not that hard, but it's just intermittent fasting, really. But and
Right.
refraining from entertainment, which nowadays, like the suttas say, like refraining from watching shows, and it's like, I see that, I see what you did, because it's not talking about TV shows, um, but I applied it also to social media for the most part, um, and also refraining from adorning oneself with or beautifying oneself with adornments.
We don't have to worry about that. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. You're
Uh,
really good looking because we're twins.
and also refraining from luxurious furniture, um,
That's right.
which I don't have any in my house, so nothing's luxurious. But um, but yeah, like a lot of people are like, "Oh my gosh, it must be so hard," like don't think about food. And it's like, but really, you're not.
Uh,
Like I was reflecting on this earlier this week. You're not refraining from doing things. You're Because at the same time you're like focusing on your meditation practice and studying the Dhamma, reading suttas or listening to Dhamma talks, like instead of watching shows, caring about my appearance,
while sitting on
eating
a
food,
couch.
yeah, you know, uh, lolling about. I'm not focused on not doing those things. I'm focused on the Dhamma, and so everything else just it's like it kind of sometimes happens as well. Like if I'm playing music, which I refrain from doing so on Vesak, but if I'm playing music, I can forget to eat for like a very very long time
Yeah.
while like making music or something.
Hmm.
And sometimes I'm just sitting on the floor in a corner playing my guitar and forget to sit on luxurious furniture.
Whoops. Well, that reminds me
It's
of a
like my
comment.
legs are cramping.
Yeah, that's very true. That has happened to me. Especially like in an awkward position, playing guitar and like your arm gets really sore in that position or something.
Oh yeah.
But that reminds me of a comment we had on YouTube from our last episode about fasting. Our listener, his name is Hugh. He said, the last time I fasted, I was trying to think through an important decision. And so I wanted to pray and fast about it. But I was so busy with work that day that I barely had any time to sit down and pray, which was the whole reason I was fasting. So I was just hungry and thirsty for no reason. uh, so I appreciate that comment, Hugh. He happens to be one of my good friends, and that I can see him doing that. But fasting is not in vain, even if you don't pray. Because remember, prayer, especially in a biblical context, is more of a kind of a never ending mindset. It's not always a verbal communication in word. So even like he obviously had something on his heart, something kind of burdening him. So even through fasting and prayer, even if you're not consciously thinking about it, um, I mean, it's still a prayer that's heard. And he was working and barely had time to do anything, so I don't blame him. I mean, he probably didn't even have time to eat that day, so it's a win-win. No,
He just accidentally fasted.
yeah. Whoops.
But yeah, also on Vesak, it's it's just a fascinating time, like, to intentionally refrain from things we always do on a daily basis, and just kind of from a, like, meditative standpoint, you can watch these habituations arise in your mind without really trying, because, and this happened the Aposita before Vesak, the I think it was the new moon Aposita. Like, I'm just like driving in my car and I just randomly start singing a song, and I'm like, whoa, 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 refrain from music. Like, it's like how just instinctual that was, just song. And it
Hmm.
and which what's interesting is, like, and I also, like, catch myself, it's so interesting watching how ingrained the habit of social media is too,
Hmm.
because you're just going along, oh, phone, Facebook, Instagram,
Yep.
and it's like,
It's
whoa, what am
already
I
a
doing?
mechanical process. Like
Yeah.
your body knows the process of grabbing the phone and like which finger's gonna hit what part of the screen
Yeah,
without even looking. It's scary.
every now and then I like to change up where my social media apps are on my phone. Like, I'll just create a folder or something and move it onto the third page just to throw myself off,
Oh
because it's
yeah,
like,
yep,
click, oh, why did I open that app? Like, oh
yeah.
yeah, that's where Facebook was.
I've actually had very little social media apps installed on my phone for a very long time. Today was actually the first day I reinstalled Facebook, and it was so I could post a GIF on something, and because like the web, I still had the web version on my phone. It's not like I was like fasting from Facebook or anything, but um, so now I probably have to get used to going into the app now instead of like going into the website. But
Yeah.
it is scary how habitual is a good word. Like it's so out of habit. Like sometimes I see people just like it's out of habit to be on their phone, but they don't even know what they're doing. They're just like, "Oh, what do I do?" Like they're almost like nervous. Like, well, I don't have anything to do. Like I guess I'll just look through my settings, and like I watch them just scroll through their settings for like, I wonder what's on my like quick launch page. Huh, cool, okay. Like it's kind of scary how much of a
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
habit, not even habit, like an addiction sometimes too.
Yeah, I'll go through phases where I will delete Facebook and Instagram from my phone. Right now, I've deleted Reddit. Um,
Oh, you're
and
a redditor.
and so it's interesting, and I've heard some meditation teachers talk about this as well, where, you take it all off your phone, and all of a sudden you find yourself habitually checking the weather. Just like, what is there to do? What is there, like, new input to see? Ooh, the weather. Uh,
I know some people that love checking the weather and announcing it too. So,
if only it plays smooth jazz. But
what that's what all the music apps are for. All it's like I gotta pull up my jazz playlist and then I could check the weather.
Siri, play smooth jazz and open the Weather Channel app.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure there's a macro or some kind of shortcut to do both at the same time.
Yeah.
Siri can do that. Siri can do anything.
But yeah, it was really interesting Um, because one, like, I find myself randomly singing and checking my phone, and catching myself doing that. Two, I didn't really do that with food a lot. Like there's some times where it's like where your mind is just like looking forward to the next like sensory experience, like, ooh, a food. And it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
no, we're not doing that today, remember? uh, but it's really interesting what you can do in a day without these distractions, because
Hmm.
like when I wasn't meditating or reading a Dhamma book, I was just cleaning my house.
Yep.
And I cleaned so much. I re like re reorganized the whole room. I did a bunch of cleaning, and I was like, wow, this is what it's like when you're not just like eating constantly or on Facebook constantly. Like this
Yeah,
is,
it's a forgotten art.
yeah. And it's and when you experience it more, you realize how beneficial it is to have these like days of, and it is like getting away from the madness of the world, like especially the Upasita days in Buddhism, where you are like kind of not closing yourself off from the world, but in Buddhism there's this emphasis on the importance of seclusion, and it's not just physical seclusion, it's also like mental seclusion. So yeah, you want to go off somewhere quiet away from people for a little bit to practice, but also like just kind of an atmospheric seclusion of, no music today, let's moderate our eating today, and and see what happens. And
By
um
doing so, by closing yourself off from those things, it almost opens you up to a whole nother world.
yeah, and it's interesting, in a sutta study group that I'm a part of, we just read the sutta that talks about two kinds of thoughts, and like the Buddha breaks his thoughts into wholesome and unwholesome, skillful and unskillful. And there was one line that really had me interested, because he said, like, if you spend a day, if you spend a night, if you spend a day or a night on like un unskillful things, like that's okay. But longer periods, like you're just gonna strain your mind, you're just gonna tire your body. And then the next one, he's like, skillful thoughts. If you spend a day, if you spend a night, if you spend a day and a night, that's okay. But any longer, you're straining your mind, you're wearing down your body. And he talks like, he's like, thinking too much, overthinking is tiresome. It's so true. And he says, like, give your awareness a place to concentrate, and basically rest.
Mm.
um I mean, everyone knows, if you overthink something, or if you worry about something for too long, you're gonna end up feeling like exhausted. And someone in the group is like, I get energy when I'm like, thinking through a, a thing that I'm like really excited about, and I'm reflecting on it, like, in the moment you might have energy, but I know of times where I was just like really excited about something, like, can't wait to get this or go there or whatever. And like I take a moment in that excitement, like, wow, this is exhausting. Like, maybe I should cool it, maybe I should, give myself some mental seclusion and rest a little.
Mm. Yeah, the Bible says much study is weariness to the flesh. So just like that constant thinking and processing and almost an overstimulation
Yeah, yeah, overstimulation is
that can
perfect.
exhaust you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely some damage.
It's like I always think I always have the image of when in Buddhism when it talks about like, you know, giving yourself a meditation object where you can rest your awareness uh and even in some translations of samadhi of this of concentration, it some people translate it as calm abiding. It's, you know, your awareness is abiding calmly. And I always in my mind I always think of your mind is like a parakeet in a cage, flying and flying and flying without a place to land, and then you just stick a little perch in there and it finally has a place
Hmm.
to settle.
Wow.
And all its feathers, you know, are just floating down and slowly, it's like a snow globe too. Your mind is always agitated until, you know, finally you can, you know, you start meditating and it's like nothing's happening, everything's still it's still such a flurry, but it's slowly settling.
Hmm.
And after a while you can you can have that mental agitation settle. And I think that's what a lot of people conflate with the, oh, I gotta clear my mind of thoughts. Ugh. Like it's, you can't force it, you have to, you know, have that mental perch for your awareness and let things passively let things settle. But
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good and I'm guessing that's a really big part of the whole celebration aspect, you know, why you weren't sitting on a couch eating watching shows, like is to have that settle down. And um I mean, much like any other holidays, like it's not so much as like that day is for it. It's just like a excellent reminder, maybe a refresher, like, oh, maybe you need to get off to a clean start and like retry this again.
yeah,
Like I
rededicate
was
yourself.
like I was talking about the C&E Christians. It could be much of that situation, not so much as like, oh, I gotta go, but like maybe I should give this another shot. So yeah, that's a very good aspect of that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Is there anything else you'd like to touch on regarding Vesak or any other holidays around this time of year?
I don't know, it's not that I can think of.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'd really do appreciate people, all of you listening and watching. Thank you, Bab Daisy, for giving us that tidbit of information. That was actually really helpful. And it helped me at least be aware that it has not happened yet. So there's still time. um, and then comments like Hugh made last episode, we might not necessarily have gotten that on while we were on air because I think that was a uh, post recording comment. But we do want to see your comments even after the fact because we will tie it in somehow because we always somehow tie things together all the time. Just like today's episode fit perfectly with Hugh's comment. So feel free to drop us a line, comment, send us like a voice clip. We might play that on air or something. You never know. Maybe
A
even
video reaction, are those still a thing?
I'm sure they are somewhere. Um, maybe on like a live Twitch or something. I don't know.
TikTok.
TikTok is the thing now. I almost said Vines for some reason. That was short-lived glory. That
Wow.
shows my technological age. Some people might not even know what I'm talking about. Vines. What in the world is that?
Yeah.
I see them on Instagram every once. I have not gotten into TikTok that much yet, but
Don't go
Instagram I'll see
there.
stuff. No, I
Don't
don't
go
want. I'm too scared. But to me,
Talk
it's
about
kind
compulsive scrolling.
of.
That's
Well, Instagram has that stuff, has like the reels and stuff too. So like they're trying to get in on that addictive scrolling, watching the shows or something, whatever the terminology you
yeah.
had.
Watching shows.
But yeah, please reach out to us, guys, if you want. You don't have to. If you don't like what we're talking about, tell us anyways. Um, or if you have anything else that you want us to talk about that we have not yet. We've scratched the surface on a lot of topics, and we will deep dive if you want us to. You don't think we haven't started deep dive on
Don't make us.
this stuff? And all that stuff's, this is it's all baby toys. Like let's if you really want us to deep dive, we'll deep dive. I'm warning you. uh, I mean, we have tons of fun topics coming up. I don't even know what next time is going to be, but it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be an amazing, amazing topic. You just don't know what it is.
Have lined up. We have good stuff lined up for that one, for that episode. Just tune in and you will find out. It's gonna be amazing, guys. After the show, we'll talk about what we're gonna
Yeah.
talk about. So with that, guys, thank you so much for listening, viewing. Thank you so much for the participation you guys have brought on show. And hey, maybe one day we'll have other people on the show as well. You never know. Um, and in the future too. I don't know how long this season's gonna go, but there are some cool stuff lined up. Um, so be prepared for more fun, awesome, cool stuff. Things that we do know about, actually.
Yes. So there are some things that we know about.
Yes,
We do
and we'll
know
just
what some things are.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So with that, happy Vasic, or how do you wish someone well on that
Happy
holiday?
Vesak.
Okay,
Happy number 2566th Vesak.
you're counting, huh?
No, that's just what all the little memes have said,
Oh, gotcha.
little Instagram posts.
Okay, that's helpful. And happy Ascension Day as well if we don't hear back from you guys on the 26th of May. And
Yeah. Happy Ascension Day.
yep.
Oh, and then I think later this month, like a week after Ascension Day or a little after, is actually the ascension of Bahu Allah from the Baha'i tradition. So a
Oh,
lot
wow.
of ascending happening.
Yeah, no kidding. It must be the Ascension season. Wow, interesting. Well, on that note, take care, everybody. Thank you for watching. This has been, and listening. This has been The Baptist
And the Buddhist.
with Mark,
And Brian.
and we